It happened on an ordinary afternoon when Maria came home early from work. She hadn't planned it, but a sudden headache had forced her to leave her office. As she pulled into the driveway, she noticed an unfamiliar car parked outside. Something inside her stomach twisted, but she pushed the thought away and walked to the front door. What she saw inside changed her marriage forever. Her husband, Richard, 50 years old and the man she had shared her life with for over 2 decades, was sitting in their living room with a young woman. The girl couldn't have been older than 19. She was dressed casually, almost too comfortably, as if she belonged there. Maria froze, her breath catching in her chest, and both Richard and the girl jumped to their feet in panic. The girl's face was flushed, and Maria could see a mix of fear and guilt in her eyes. Richard stammered, trying to explain, but Maria's mind was too clouded to listen. She had trusted this man for years, supported him through struggles, and built a life with him. Now she was staring at betrayal embodied in the form of a girl young enough to be their daughter. Maria didn't scream at first. She simply stared at the girl, her voice steady but sharp. "Who are you?" The girl hesitated, glancing at Richard for help, but Maria cut in before she could speak. "No, don't look at him. Look at me. Who are you to my husband?" The silence in that room was heavier than anything Maria had ever felt. Finally, the girl mumbled her name, explaining that she and Richard had met at a cafe months ago. She admitted she hadn't known he was married at first but had continued the relationship even after learning the truth. Maria felt her heart splinter. It wasn't just Richard's lies. This girl had knowingly stepped into her marriage. Her anger surged, not only at Richard but also at the 19-year-old who stood there as if she were the victim. Maria's voice grew louder. "Do you know what you're doing? Do you know the damage you've caused to a family? Or do you only see him as some kind of prize?" The girl's eyes welled up with tears, but Maria refused to soften. Richard tried to intervene, placing his hand on Maria's shoulder, but she shoved it away. "Don't touch me," she snapped. "You've already touched someone else." She turned back to the girl, her pain spilling out as fury. "You're young, but that doesn't excuse you. You knew he was married. You still chose to stay. That makes you part of this betrayal." The girl stammered that she thought Richard was unhappy in his marriage and that he had told her things Maria had never heard before. Lies, excuses, and justifications filled the air, but Maria didn't want to hear them. She realized then that this wasn't just about the girl. It was about Richard's choices, his deceit, and his disrespect. In that moment, Maria made a decision. She told the girl to leave immediately. Her voice was steady but cold, filled with authority. The 19-year-old grabbed her bag and rushed out, not daring to look back. Maria stood there, her chest heaving, watching the door close behind her. Silence fell between her and Richard. For the first time in their marriage, she didn't feel like his wife. She felt like a stranger who had been fooled for years. Richard began to plead, saying it was a mistake, a lapse in judgment, that it didn't mean anything. But Maria wasn't blind anymore. His excuses sounded as empty as the house now felt. She told him she wasn't going to humiliate herself by begging or forgiving. "You chose her over me," she said firmly. "And that choice has consequences." Richard begged for another chance, but Maria had already seen enough. She walked into their bedroom, gathered a few things into a bag, and told him she would not stay another night under the same roof. That evening, Maria stayed at her sister's house, her mind racing. She replayed the confrontation over and over, every word, every look, every tear. She felt shattered, but also strangely powerful. She had stood up for herself, confronted both the young girl and her husband, and made her decision clear. Days turned into weeks, and Maria began the process of filing for divorce. Richard continued to call, sending messages, begging her to return, but Maria didn't waver. The image of him with that 19-year-old girl was burned into her memory. There was no going back, no fixing the cracks in a marriage built on lies. Maria's friends and family rallied around her. They reminded her of her strength, her dignity, and her worth. Slowly she began to heal, realizing that her life wasn't ending, it was just changing. She wasn't defined by her husband's betrayal, but by the courage she showed in facing it. In the end, Richard lost not just a wife, but a partner, a best friend, and the respect of his children. Maria, on the other hand, walked away with her head held high. She had faced the 19-year-old girl, she had faced her unfaithful husband, and she had chosen herself. And in choosing herself, she found the beginning of a new life. One free from lies, one full of self-respect, and one that promised a future brighter than the past she left behind.